Good chance.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming. My name's Blaine. I'm a sophomore at Brent International School. As well as being involved in 3 sports and student council, I'm also co-president of the Geek Squad, which is a club at Brent that's very student-led, and it's for students that are passionate about technology and have fun learning with that. The Geek Squad runs a project called Tech for Teaching that I created last year in grade 9. It's a project that aims to gather old computers, fix them up, and install them in a local elementary school, the one you just saw in the video actually. So today I'm going to talk about the lab, Tech for Teaching. I hope to talk about my learning process for technology and how I got to the point of actually starting this project, as well as so my learning process and what led me to start that project. It's kind of 2 different things that combine a little bit. I pretty much started Tech for Teaching to help my passion of playing with computers to help in a local community. So this is that local community. I learned about this community from Anna. Anna is a helper I've had previously that we then put through school, and she wound up working in Montplaisant Elementary, which is an elementary school, public school about 10 minutes away from Brent. This is the road leading to that school. And I learned more about her school and decided I wanted to help. Once you get here, that's the gates to the school. And inside there, they're setting up for their new school year and fixing a couple desks. If you go inside a classroom, this is what a typical classroom looks like. There's no aircon. They're using chalkboards. It's pretty crowded. There's about 40 students in the classroom. This is what a classroom looks like right before the school year. They're fixing up desks, getting ready for the new school year. At the end here, you see me, not the fan. There, me fixing up a computer and that we already installed in the classroom. So this is what a typical classroom. Hello. What a typical classroom looks like. when that's set up during the school year. With all the kids crowding around the corner there, they're actually looking at one of the computers we installed. I just finished fixing the computer, and as I got up, they're all crowding around the computer that hasn't worked for about a week, getting a chance to play with it again for the first time. So, I didn't think that was coming yet. I'll now show you a video of our first trip to install computers in Mount Pleasant Elementary, so you'll hopefully get an idea of what we do in this project, what the school looks like with computers in it.
It's so fun to see all the kids get excited about something they probably never touched before. It'll probably give them a lot of new opportunities to learn.
Yeah, this was actually fun. The kids, like, all their little happy faces, they're all crowded around the computer. I mean, for us, computers, like, computers can be old, but to them, it's something really new for them to experience, something they enjoy. And now we can actually start giving to them what they used to know, what they used to enjoy, as a new way of learning.
Are you there? But I can choose to disable them.
So hopefully that gives you an idea of what kind of club Geek Squad is, what we do at Mount Pleasant Elementary. Here's a quote that kind of sums up my philosophy with the project. Basically, if you give people tools, they'll do wonderful things with them. So we're setting up these computers, trusting that the kids will, by discovery, find ways to do wonderful things with them. It pretty much sums up the whole idea of tech for teaching. So now you have a little bit of understanding what the project is. I'm going to rewind about 10 years and start from when I was an infant up to about middle school to show my learning process for technology and how I learned when given opportunities. It kind of relates to the Steve Jobs quote because I learned mainly from hands-on opportunities I was given. It all started, that's me, from a love of pushing buttons and seeing their results. I would go around and turn on all the light switches in the house and turn off all the light switches in the house and just generally push buttons. I once stopped an escalator in a crowded mall by accident because it had a little button on the front, and so I pressed the button. On that picture, I'm resetting the counter on an old radio. I also had an awesome grandpa who gave me a lot of learning opportunities from a young age. Here, there's a 20-volt power supply along with a number counter, and I'm getting to control whether the numbers click forwards or backwards depending on how I connect two wires. Growing up a little bit, I was given toys like Legos, every kid's favorite toy, or at least in my opinion it should be, but I was also given things like motors and wires and batteries, and so I combined these two toys to make a Lego hotel that then had an elevator go up and down. I have tons of fun with that. Where am I? So my love of pushing buttons got a boost in grade 5 when Harley and I, who's actually giving another presentation next door, were able to become honorary members of the Geek Squad, the student-led club I mentioned earlier. It's an upper school club, but in grade 5 we were allowed to hang around and learn stuff with them. This is where I learned about quite a bit from just hearing people. This is where I first heard of Linux from Jerry, which later became the operating system we used for the Tech for Teaching project. I got another opportunity when a retired engineer in our community, also around grade 5, moved away and gave me a bunch of electronics, including this computer. Both he and my parents assumed I would play around with it, discover it's useless in today's standards, by today's standards, and then throw it away. Instead, I tried turning it on and instantly broke it. I was devastated until I went online, did a little bit of research, found out it wasn't all that hard to fix. And so I fixed it, and it kept having repeated errors. That's why I call it Lazarus, because I keep having to resurrect it. But I actually learned quite a bit from all the problems it had and how to fix the inside of the computer. This computer would regularly experience blue screens of death. There'd always be loose IDE cables. It would occasionally randomly corrupt the operating system. There'd be incorrect jumper configurations since I was trying to get multiple drives in one machine, as well as BIOS configuration errors from messing around in BIOS without really knowing what I was doing. My helper, Anna, who I've mentioned earlier, saw me playing with Lazarus and mentioned she had an old computer that was broken. She gave it to me and said, "You can fix this if you want, or throw it away if you can't." And so I fixed it, and a couple years later, it actually got put in her school in Mount Washington Elementary, which was kind of a fun thing to see. Another learning opportunity I got was when someone gave me a power supply from one of those computers that had a switch to turn on and off. And the way that works is the power supply is directly connected to the switch, and you connect these two wires. Why am I writing in black? These two wires, whoa, it's huge. Sorry about that. Connect these two wires and these two wires, and it turns the power supply and therefore the computer on. However, I didn't know that's what it did, and so I was playing around with the wires while it was plugged in and touched one of them and got quite the electrical shock, since it's pretty much equivalent in a 220-volt country to sticking your finger into the wall socket, which is a bad idea. I don't recommend that. I was unaware of these repercussions because the modern power supplies use a transistor to just connect the green and the black wires and turn that on. So I was used to turning those on by simply jamming a paperclip into that and using that to power up my electronic projects. So even now, I'm still being given learning opportunities. That computer you see there is this computer that's, maybe you can't see it, my personal one that I'm currently using to present on. Back when it was about 1 year old, my parents let me take it apart because I was concerned about it overheating. I'd been monitoring it using a temperature called core temp, a program that monitors its temperature called core temp, and I was noticing the CPU under intensive use would get to 105 degrees Celsius, which is not very good. That's 5 degrees above boiling, and so I was fairly concerned about overheating due to my last computer dying from literally a melting graphics card. So I took it apart, and after a bunch of research, found out that this was the problem. HP has the CPU around there, the graphics card around there, and they both have heat pipes conducting the heat into these two heat sinks, which are connected by that. So in theory, you have the fan that blows out the side and out the back, which cools it down double time. However, HP used the wrong fan, which has a piece of plastic there, meaning it can only utilize one heat sink. So my solution was, wait, let's get rid of all these marks. My solution was to open it up and cut off the piece of plastic that's supposed to go here, that's there, so it can now blow out both heat sinks, and it worked. My laptop now runs 20 degrees cooler. It's very nice. So now you understand, hopefully, what my learning process was and the opportunities I was being given up until about middle school. So now I'll talk about the beginnings of an idea, how Tech for Teaching kind of came about subconsciously in my mind. So all those opportunities I was telling you about, getting donated hardware, learning from the Geek Squad, led to me being able to set up my own little workstation in the corner of the house in grade 5, which gave me even more opportunity to mess around with computers, which I loved. These 2 computers that people expected me to throw away had turned into my own workstation. When people would visit, they'd see that and ask, well, what's that in the corner? It's weird. And so I'd tell them what it was all about. And some of them would say, oh, I have old hardware too that doesn't work, and they'd donate that to me. So over the years of being donated hardware, my little workstation in the corner grew into something much, much larger. This, I have to say, is actually fairly organized, since it usually covers half of the floor as well. Along with the table that I'm not supposed to use for any of my electronics. So, this is where I was in grade 7. I had a bunch of computers overflowing this entire room pretty much, which I loved. My parents did not. They told me if I was to keep accumulating electronic junk, because that's really what it kind of was. It had no purpose in the corner of my room. I was going to have to get rid of some of it, which made me kind of sad initially, but then I started thinking that for me, computers were fun. But apart from being fun, they could be fairly useful too. This train of thought coincided with the aforementioned room piling up with computers. This train of thought also coincided with visiting Anna's classroom and learning more about her school and how little technology they had. This train of thought also coincided with me at the time learning more about Linux, a free open source operating system that just had so much potential. And so all of these things were going on inside my head. Those came together to form Tech for Teaching, where I finally decided to take all the stuff in my room and try to put it to a good cause. This is where past experiences came in very useful, such as the Geek Squad and my own messing around with computers, because at this point I knew what I wanted to do. I just needed to figure out how. Initially, I needed to know what operating system to use, and I had quite a bit of experience with Linux from playing around with it on my computer. This, you see, is what a normal partition table should look like. You have your operating system drive, a couple of recovery drives. My old laptop, this is what it looked like. This is from almost at random installing Linux operating systems on my computer throughout grade 7. So I'd had a fair bit of experience with Linux. Linux has a bunch of different distributions, so it's free, it's open source, and there's a million different types of Linuxes you can install. So I had to find one that would suit, that would be good for putting in a local elementary classroom. I came across ones like Klima, which initially looks perfect. It's kid-friendly, it has all the educational applications pinned to the sidebar already, but it was pretty basic and not very powerful, so I dismissed it and kept looking. After about a month, I came up with what I thought was the perfect operating system, Ubuntu. It's a flavor of Ubuntu that runs the Unity desktop, so it's actually really powerful as well as being educational. It comes with 100 applications pre-installed, and it can run with very old hardware, which was very much one of my requirements, given some of the computers we are donated have 512 megabytes of RAM and a single-core 1 gigahertz processor, which is about the standard from 2005 or earlier. And even if that doesn't work, it has a sibling Ubuntu that we can still get to run on systems with almost no power at all. So I had the operating system. I now just made a couple tweaks to it so that it was easier for them to use. Out of the 100 applications pre-installed, I decided to pin a couple to the sidebar so that they could easily use them. I'll try to run through those. You've got initially your file system, so you can actually figure out where you save stuff. Then you've got LibreOffice, which is a really powerful, free alternative to Microsoft Office, essentially, so you can type out things, do what you would in Microsoft Office. We've also got the equivalent to Excel and PowerPoint called Calc and Presenter. Next, you've got a kind of interesting choice, which is system settings. Little kids that don't know how to use a computer should generally not be getting into settings because there is potential for them to mess things up. But when I was a kid, I found so much joy and found I learned more from going into settings and figuring out how computers actually worked. So I included that in hopes that they would get the same joy. Then you have a really powerful educational suite, GCompre, that has tons of subcategories of typing, math, etc. There's almost everything in there. Then, what I'm told is their favorite, Tux Typing and Tux Math are games where you can type out words or answer math problems. It'll save the penguins' igloos. Then you've got another interesting one, Potato Guy. You're presented with a naked potato, and you have to close him and put on a smile and put on a hat, anything you want. But when I was in grade 1 and 2, we had a similar Caterpillar application, which I loved. And so this can be a kind of fun free time for the kids, as well as teaching them how to drag items onto a screen. Next up, you've got Color Paint, which I call the ultimate creativity tool. You're presented with a blank canvas, and you can do anything you want with it. I spent a ton of time on that in elementary school. We've also got your camera and microphone applications. And if they want any more, they can go and discover the hundreds of others. So, after choosing the operating system, I was ready to see if all this theoretical stuff would actually work. So I had a test dummy called Snazzy. That's the name of the computer. It was very snazzy. I put it in my friend Anna's classroom and left it there for a month and told her, use it as you regularly would and give me feedback on how it's being helpful, how it's not being helpful, and whatnot. So about a month later, I came back and I was astounded with what I saw. The kids were actually using the computer on a regular basis, and they displayed confidence with navigating the operating system, playing games, even discovering new applications. They had an e-classroom, but strict rules to protect the computers made it underutilized. So a computer in the classroom itself was giving kids the opportunities that I wanted them to have to learn from technology. So now I had the confidence my project would work. I decided to first set up a website. This is a website I created back in middle school, which I put a ton of time into. It had stuff for student council. It was a student council website. It had upcoming events, photo gallery, reminders. I was very happy with it. Put a ton of time into it. Set up Google Analytics, and almost nobody used it. And the couple of views that were there were mostly myself. So I spent a ton of time on something that wound up actually not being used at all. So I kept this in mind when I set up the Tech for Teaching website. I didn't spend too much time on it. I set it up so that it would briefly introduce the project and show a couple of videos to get people's interest. So that's, again, when past learning experiences come in useful. Where am I at? So, I had a website. I had an idea. I even had a test machine that was working. It was time to establish Tech for Teaching as a project and gather a team to help me. The Geek Squad at Brent School turned out being the perfect place. This is the same club that I was an honorary member of in grade 5, that I now joined officially in grade 9. I proposed the idea to them, and they readily accepted. Geek Squad's a perfect place to run it from because I can kind of oversee it, but have a bunch of people to help me with the details. Covered, for example, is just as passionate as I am about taking stuff apart, if not necessarily putting it back together. Then you have Harley, who's much more capable than me at the software side of video editing and logo creation. He created our logo. So I had him to help me with that. So our first trip, which is the video you saw in the beginning, we got computers from our own houses and cobbled together parts and came up with 6 computers to install. So we took our first trip, installed computers in Mount Lawson Elementary, and left them there for about 3 months before, not 3 months, that makes it sound like we took them out afterward. 3 months before later interaction. So as the project grew, we had more things to play around with and work on. And it extended part of my home workstation, which I'm sure my parents were like, yes about, because I finally could bring stuff to squad room and mess up Mr. Castaneda's office instead of my house. But any tool at any given time could be either in squad or at my house. The only problem is we have like 2 outlets in the entire room and only 1 accessible one, so we wind up doing crazy things like that. That's part of the spirit of squad. So, gauging our success, fast forward 3 months. We've put, where am I? We've put those 6 computers in Mount Lawson Elementary, and I decided to go to see if they were getting just as much use as Snazzy was. It was a Saturday, and I was walking down the hall to go inspect some of the computers, and to my surprise I heard over here the sound of a typing game, then over here the sound of a math game, and it turned out, even on a Saturday, they were using the computers. I went into one classroom, and there was a boy playing with a computer, and I was really sad because I had to take the computer away from him to do a checkup, but turns out he didn't mind. He was just interested in the mouse. You'll notice him in this video. He's, the entire time I did the checkup, going through,
Yep.
looking at the mouse, looking the way the light reflected on things.
Figured out that the light in the mouse
Yeah.
very entertaining.
So it was fun to see how kids found joy from this project that I didn't even anticipate. I went to check up on another computer and found, not that, the camera roll completely filled with pictures like this. Like, over 50 photos of almost the identical photo over and over again. Even videos of them experimenting with the camera, moving back and forth. So it was fun to see how kids found joy from my project that I didn't anticipate. And apparently, the same appeared to be true for the teachers. That same Saturday, I went and fixed a broken computer and had a dead CMOS battery. So I replaced that, changed the date and time settings back to what they should be, and as I stood up to leave, 3 kids slid in behind me and immediately booted up the computer and started playing a typing game. And I was so happy to see how comfortable they were using the computer and how they were actually learning from it. They were provided with technology, and they found ways to do wonderful things. So, I don't know where I am actually. Sorry. So in short, the project was a success. I saw kids comfortably navigating the computers, and all the applications showed signs of usage. Potato Guy had a different default background. There were a bunch of saved applications in the save folder. Teachers had created word lists for the students. It was just a huge step forward from my forgotten middle school website that only I viewed. I created something useful that other people had found fun as well. I'll show you a video now of this Saturday that we went to, that I went to check up on them. I also asked the teachers questions, so you can get a feel of what the computers meant from the eyes of the teachers that worked there.
Use it for the Excel, doing the grades. Yeah, I use the Excel and the PowerPoint for some presentation.
They can type their own documents, sometimes when they use the math, about math, so they can easily answer that questions that given. So that is very useful.
For mathematics subject and also for writing.
I'm recording stories here, some poems for the kids to listen. By having a computer inside the classroom in itself, they were able to explore technology, like they were, like what Ms. Mendoza said, it actually motivated the students. Well, it's being very helpful to me, especially for the slow learner ones. They really love doing the talks math.
Sometimes they are more knowledgeable than me. They are the one who teach me how to use that. And I'm very surprised for that, actually.
One of my students here showed me that there's a music instrument here where there's sound, and you can make choices, the instrument for them to be able to identify it. And I don't know that before, but then they show me because after classes I let them play, and after a while when I get back, they were in the other application, searching around, discovering everything in the computer, and they show me that the music instrument, and exactly when we were just discussing about music instrument in the class. So I used that for the activity.
They help a lot in their about mathematics, and then they also learn how to type their names, and also they can draw.
One of my students tried very hard to do the addition and the basic multiplication just to be able to play, because after classes they have chances to play if they excel a little bit in their performance, and it motivates them to do a little harder in their studies.
Nowadays, children are more like visual. They learn more if they can like touch, and then they can see and hear the things around them. Like instead of like just looking at the blackboard and then read and then write, it's like a different teaching strategy for the teachers.
Thank you for all the for this computer. So the children learned a lot, and we are very thankful for this gadget.
Whoops. Sorry. This is exactly what I hoped would happen. I was so happy to hear what they had to say. One of the teachers mentioned a kid showing her an application that she didn't know existed, and actually she showed it to me. I didn't know it existed either, and she was able to use that to teach the lesson. I was so happy that kids were being given chances to explore on their own and discover things for themselves, and that was helping the class in a positive way too. You'll notice I'm very happy whenever kids are being given chances to discover things by themselves, especially with technology. This is in large part because it reminds me of my own grade 1 computer classes. They were very open-ended. Mr. O, our computer teacher, would teach us how to use a program and then let us go to our own computers and make something and then just explore the program. And this was one of my art masterpieces from grade 1. It looks like a complete waste of printer ink to bring home to happily show my parents. I even spelled my own name wrong. But if you look closer, I was discovering how to use things like shapes, the smiley face and the sun, as well as fill effects using background shading for the smiley face and my name, and even filling invisible things with color. So while it may not be the most beautiful, I was definitely learning from it. Miss Hoyos, another computer teacher I had, whenever I was hesitant to click on something, she would always encourage me, saying, "Remember, there's no button that makes the computer explode." This had a large impact on me, actually, and let me click on even more buttons, thinking there's nothing I can do that could make this thing blow up. I later found out there is one button that makes the computer explode. On the back of the computer, most power supplies have a voltage selector that can go from 220 to 110 volts to 210, 220, why do I keep saying 210? 220, 110, 220, 110. And if in the Philippines, which is a 220 volt country, the voltage selector is set to 110 volts, you plug it in, smoke comes out of the back, and power supply at least is very much blown up. So, at this point in Tech for Teaching, we had our first 6 computers in. They were being used. The project was by far off the ground. It was time to look into getting more computers. That's the only problem we had left, was getting more computers. So first we tried going big. We'd make announcements in chapel, we set up a booth during tech, we did all this big campaigning. All of that got us exactly 1 computer. I was interested at first on why we were doing so little. Getting so little. I assumed that maybe we just needed to go bigger. Until I met Miss Lisa. She's the one on the left here. Right. Who heard about our project through a personal conversation and donated 6 computers to us. Just 1 person. This was the same number that we already had in Mont Placid Elementary at the time. And I was blown away by that, discovering that a personal conversation with 1 person is 6 times more effective than 3 big campaigns. I'll show you the video of the trip we took to install those 6 computers donated by Miss Lisa.
Going to Mont Placid Elementary to install more computers for Tech for Teaching. Geek Squad trip. I said that backwards. Tech for Teaching is true. Tech for Teaching is a project where we gather our own computers, refurbish them, and then install them in a local elementary classroom. Kids use the computers for a variety of things: math, typing, not GTA 5. I can't even remember my own project right now. That's how exhausted I am. Because I'm sick. Wait, is this shiny?
Able to help me still make use of equipment that I thought had died and had no life left in it at all. He basically gave the equipment a new lease on life. I think it's wonderful that Brent is reaching out and trying to give back to the community and to find a useful application for the software that you kids have installed into these computers now. So it's great for everyone all around.
So glad to be able to give computers to a place that doesn't have many and actually needs the technological support. Next step is we're always looking for more computers. That's really the limiting factor of our project, is to put computers in classrooms. We need computers. So as long as we can get computers, we can just keep putting them in Mont Placid Elementary, and then when we're done, move on to other schools and just start populating as many schools as we can with computers.
So that brings us to about where we are now, with, I think, yes, 11 computers in Montplaisant Elementary. We've actually gathered 9 more, and that are ready to go. We're planning a trip next Thursday. If you want to join us, actually, talk to me after the presentation. If you live in the Philippines, you're invited to come on that. That will complete the entire school, and we'll begin looking for another school to do the same thing too. So, as we begin to find another school, I've been thinking more about how Tech for Teaching came about and has been working. And one of the things I noted, oh yes, those are the 9 computers that we're getting ready to put in classrooms. So, reflecting, I've noticed there's kind of 2 sides to Tech for Teaching. The technical side, the logistical side. The technical side comprising of all this fun stuff with gutting computers and replacing power supplies and tinkering with stuff and accidentally blowing them up, with the logistical side being more of coordinating between principals, both Montplaisant Elementary and of Brent, and working with the Geek Squad, all of that. And I've been surprised to find out that the technical side, once Geek Squad's been involved, has kind of been the smaller side, with the logistical side taking over. So thinking about that has also led me to thinking about how the project worked. It's different for any project you might want to conduct, but for me, Tech for Teaching initially was learning how to repair broken computers, then learning what operating system and software to use, and then learning how to set that up, and finally learning where to donate them. Making a project last, however, which is even more important almost, keeping it afloat after it's off the ground, consists, in my mind, for any project, of 2 main things: establishing goals, and then planning for long-term success. We're kind of in the middle of that right now with Tech for Teaching. I've established goals. We want to put a computer in every classroom at Montplaisant Elementary, and then move on to another school and do the same thing when we're done with that. In terms of long-term success, planning for the project to continue after I leave, I'm still looking for a 5th grader who loves pushing buttons to come and join Geek Squad as an honorary member that I can then teach more about Linux and have him learn for himself, that can then take over the project one day. So, here's a photo of our Geek Squad this year on the left. Then on the right, you can see us receiving a grant from Hirkos for $500. That's really helped Tech for Teaching. We've used it to purchase a couple speakers and possibly peripherals in the future that we haven't been donated, but a computer is just lacking that. If you want to learn more about the project, see all the videos we have today, that I showed you today, as well as if you have any donations, you can fill out a form on our website, techforteachingph.org. Once again, if you'd like to join the trip next Thursday, you can come see me. If there's any questions, I can answer those now. If not, you have time to explore Linux, the operating system. That's how we set it up on on the computers we install in classrooms. This is how they'll be set up. If you have any questions, you can feel free to ask me about it. These are computers that will be going into the school soon on our trip next Thursday.